CE5, counterintelligence, knowing what's what, or Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind with J. Allen Hynek, is there's a history and a true thread of intelligence and a real true history from at least 1947 forward that we all like to tell. And I guess Richard Dolan was one who started a thread as a history major, I believe. And he became relatively well known after Stanton T. Friedman. Stanton Friedman, well, you start off, and he told me this personally, in little groups of women's houses, having them come and teach or tell things he knew. And then he got asked to go to some universities, and he just got on a talking circuit about UFOs, Stanton Friedman, and then I talked to him, but only after I was on a mission, after meeting Thomas R. Morris. This was a gentleman that went through the Department of Navy. He had several schools. He's a sharpshooter. He had like 23 schools. And when he was in there, Ron Contra took the pins out of the weapons that were going over to trade for Carter, President Carter, and Ronald Reagan at that swap time. And so Ronald Reagan was coming into office in 80, wanted to meet him, find out who he was, since he was the new kid on the block, and he liked him. They got along, and so they became friends instantly, and that's when Ronald Reagan had assigned him. Now, remember, I had met Ronald Reagan prior in Houston. Maybe I didn't say, but Ronald Reagan and Bush I had both met, but the older Bush, not the younger Bush, the older Bush out at arranged. I was dating one of the Secret Service agents for a while, but this was prearranged. But with Ronald Reagan, I guess it was prearranged too. There was a lot of men in black or Secret Service, and they always had a little thing in their ear. But I met Ronald Reagan, I guess you'd say, at the Astra Hall, out where the Astrodome was. They had a big meeting organization there, and he was taken out in the hall for me to meet. So I'd already met him at one level. Now, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I was very intuitive, and I knew it, and I think the extraterrestrials knew it, and that somehow the group that I'm interested in doing what I can to make all of this fit together is to bring in a whole different level that's being exposed, or disinformation, misinformation, information, fake news, are those that are getting out there. There's started Ace Folk Life years ago in 2003 with Thomas R. Morris, my husband, but there's a whole group of people that have all said they've had all kind of experiences with other races of beings, and that's fine. But the ones the government were involved with I believe those that have been coming forever, and they've known they've always come, and they keep a close eye on anything that comes and goes. And a lot of what we deal with is true, and I believe we do need a UFO secret space group, or at least a space group above and beyond the one that we already have. And we have Air Force, and we had the CIA, and we have NASA, and we have all the Security Council, Council of Foreign Relations, World Banks. We have the U.S. Treasury, IRS, all the things that we have. I'm sure they're doing their part to make the world a better place in whatever reason. But we have reasons. We have chaos. We have balance. We have order in chaos. And I've always been one to follow the Constitution of the United States, because that's I was trained from the time I was in elementary school forward. So I'm a constitutionalist, I guess one might say. I believe in the United States of America, and that was probably the best thing that was ever done on the planet. But all this stuff that goes on off planet, I believe there's a lot. I believe we've got a lot undercover. I believe there's men in black, whether they're working with Department of Energy, but it all has to do with nuclear, space, fission, and Bob Lazar worked at S4. He worked at, when you go to Area 51, it goes south to area, it's called S4. But I believe he worked and was paid by the same people, Naval Intelligence, and that he had other things going on, which he gladly tells about Art Bell, or to Art Bell, with another gentleman, I believe was Huff, and a UFO YouTube that you can listen to. And I'm surprised Tommy Hawksbill didn't show up because he had wanted to, but I sent him a copy of this. But being very vague about all the stuff I did, I have a story to tell, and I believe it's far more important than many of these stories of people seeing visions in their mind first and then coming up with all kind of stories afterwards about various groups of beings. But that's got into our folklore now. Now a lot of people believe it's real, and it may be real. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm not trying to debunk anything. But what I am trying to do is get straight what I believe has come to be pulled together for what various reasons, and how it's changed our emotional stability. And at one time with my parents growing up, they were very programmed not to believe in UFOs for whatever reason. I don't know, other than the media was controlled, and that fear after the War of the Worlds, and that was at a time in the 40s and after World War II, Korean War. And I believe that people were taught that these things weren't true, and it was put out there, especially after 47. And Mother was born in 32, so 42, 47. After she went through, they went through Depression. But there's a reason that everybody thought, and they just kept it like anything to do with UFOs. And later on, I'll learn that's how the government kept a lot of things undercover, too. And they wanted people, when they were brought up on something of military grade level of our national security, they would use a cover story of UFOs so people wouldn't believe them, to discredit people that had actually seen something involved in national security. And I verified that with a man named Richard Doty, D-O-T-Y, who worked for the Air Force and other government level, had a deep clearance at one time or another. That's per him. Not me, but what he told me. So to me, it's firsthand information. But he was relatively well trained, and I believe he was in a little television series you can find on YouTube. Richard Doty with Richard Dolan, I believe, and Linda Moulton Howell. These are names of people that do historical research in the UFO industry, our community. And I've been there. I've just been the one that was told you can't talk about it or you'll get fired. And I was interested in keeping my job or making sure that I had a livelihood at the time. But now that I'm retired, there's people, or algorithms, if you will, leading me into a future that is allowing me to have this TJ Mars ET radio and to help other people with where they are in life and what they're going to do as trained investigators or researchers or journalists. And we need to get this story straight because there's various threads that have happened. And we should have been, I thought, personally, in working with other people in this business that is not disclosed, that we know each other in other ways, that we were all going to get together after Bob Lazar, and everything was going to be different. It was going to be more open. And after I was in a conversation with men of intelligence and I guess in the undercover Men in Black intelligence world at one time, where we approved in 1989, 1990, right with Bob Lazar, to come forward with Dr. Stephen Greer to be a spokesperson. So for whoever's out there listening in the business, there's a story that needs to start with Stan Friedman, Kenneth Arnold. We'll start with Kenneth Arnold telling the story. It's Stanton Friedman, George Filer, who was Air Force pilot that saw UFOs and the astronauts, and talked to several astronauts while I was in Houston. And there's a whole story to tell here. And my opinion is everyone has their own world, their own history, their own reality, and how they tell their own story and how it goes forward. And I've had several people over the years listen to these radio shows I've done here with Thomas R. Morris, Janet Carolesson, Thomas Anthony Sinisi, which is Tommy Hawk's Blood, Tony R. Elliott, Bill M. Tracer, and some that just came and went. And I deleted the Stanton Friedman, and I could shoot myself for doing that, but I was mad at Tommy. Some of the ones that we did in the beginning were just ridiculous, so I deleted a lot of them. And Stanton was on the very first of these shows, Stanton T. Friedman. So I may have to get him back on here, but he's retired now. But he came on one of my very first shows with me and Janet Carolesson, one or two of them. And then Richard Dolan came on. But we appreciate everybody that helped form TJMRCT Radio and getting it going. And the UFO business was going to be what we were going to talk about the most. And it's taken a really strange level of existence. And a lot of my friends I'm meeting now in Pensacola and Gulf Breeze, Florida, where I moved, here, Gulf Breeze, it's amazing how some of these people believe these stories. Now, maybe they're true, but they really want to believe they are, about people that have been out there making a lot of money with Gaia TV, David Wilcock, Corey Good, is it Emery Smith? Forgotten the names of the people. But Larry Warren with, I don't think he's made a penny, but he may have written a book recently, Nick Pope, Jim Peniston, the Rendlesham Forest on my birthday, December 26th. There's something I haven't told people about that, and I have a strange UFO energy with beings that I don't know how I fit in yet. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I have this precognition and this inspiration or innovation or unity consciousness going on that I called the Ascension Age because of a story. Whether it was controlled or not, I don't know. But I want to think that everything that I've gone through, I've had consciousness about and know that happened out of curiosity. I don't believe I've broken any laws. I don't feel like I have. I was always following the law. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I didn't drug to this day. It's just not in my DNA, my profile, my desires. And I'm not saying I can't sit and hold a drink if I have to. I've had to do that before. Social, especially with agents after they got off from working with George Bush in Houston. Me and Moe Hamburger, he made Roto-Rooter. We used to go out and be put up in the paper, socialites. That was fun back in the day. But anyway, there is a UFO story here. I need to tell it. And I'm not getting any younger, that's for sure. Now that my husband's gone, he said I could tell it. And so I may just cut this down to 1 hour since I'm on the radio. And people keep calling me, interestingly enough. There's something going on that with the Bob Lazar gravity, space, and time that he tells the truth about black holes and how time, and this is something I'm curious about because I have some knowledge about a UFO that my husband and I, whether it's real or not, is up to the people listening. The opinion of mine is that my husband and I worked on a spacecraft, and there's some interesting information about that, but I'm going to wait till another time to say that I'm going to cut this off at an hour, but see how this goes because this is going on iTunes, Stitcher, FM radio, Spreaker, and the main thing I'm curious about is see how this title goes out on YouTube and see who may be interested in how we're going to thread this story into what I really believe is reality, and that is the levels of how many different levels we have in UFOs, and Bob Lazar had just one. He said there was at least 9 there when he was at his 4, and outside Las Vegas. I flew into Las Vegas a lot, and